The grit from Kendra's taillights drifted down on my charcoal funeral dress as I stood on the gravel shoulder of US 550, my lone suitcase parked by my ankle like a loyal mutt. Her engine note thinned into the New Mexico heat until nothing remained but the hiss of passing semis and the aftertaste of her parting sentence. "We're keeping everything. Figure yourself out, then, as though twisting the knife. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell folks where you're watching from." 7 days earlier, I'd laid Harold in the ground. 7 days of condolences and casserole dishes. 7 days of Kendra doing the performance of bereaved daughter while her husband Travis inventoried my life with appraiser's eyes. They'd carved up 42 years of marriage the way turkey vultures peel at roadkill. The joke of it stung like cheap bourbon. Kendra thought she'd hit pay dirt, the adobe on Juniper Lane with the wide portal, the antique walnut pieces from Harold's mother, the savings account she'd glimpsed once, never reading the fine print. She didn't know that every asset, each one, had already been folded quietly and legally into irrevocable trusts months ago, watched over by my attorney, Gabriel Ortiz. Harold and I had been laying that track for 2 solid years, ever since we noticed Kendra and Travis circling like hammerheads. Their questions about policies and beneficiaries, their little what-ifs at every visit, told me everything I needed to know. A tractor-trailer thundered past, the wake snatching my silver hair across my eyes. I smoothed it back and picked up the scuffed suitcase. At 64, I was not the husk my daughter was counting on. She'd bet on dependency, on me being pliable. She forgot who raised her while Harold pulled doubles at the refinery. She forgot I'd run our ledgers for decades, and that at 45 I went back to school for my teaching credential and worked my way to retirement. Mostly she forgot that during the last 5 years Harold and I watched her real self step out from behind the sweet daughter costume. It came like drip water on limestone, slow and certain. First, the offhand dismissals, the snide little eye rolls during Sunday dinners, the way conversation died out when we stepped into a room. We became burdens instead of parents, heirloom clutter in her imagined estate. The final crack split 3 months before Harold's heart gave up, when we overheard her on speaker with Travis, planning how they'd refresh their place once we were out of the picture. They argued whether to keep the carved dining set or flip it for a cleaner aesthetic. I watched the color leak from Harold's face. Our daughter, talking about us as though we were already an obituary, drafting renovations on our ghosts. That night we called Gabriel and put the rest in motion. Now, on a sun-blanched shoulder, outside Cuba, New Mexico, a hard, cool satisfaction settled in my chest. Sooner than later, Kendra would learn. When she walked over to claim the house, she'd meet the Juniper Trust, which answers only to its sole living trustee, me. When she tried to touch the bank, she'd find the balances long since rolled to investment vehicles out of her reach. The life insurance she'd counted on, relocated, with Harold's full blessing, to Sunrise Children's Hospital's endowment, in his name, exactly as we mapped out. A sun-faded pickup eased onto the shoulder ahead of me. The driver's window slid down. A man in his 70s, skin weathered like saddle leather, tipped his cap. "Ma'am, this stretch isn't friendly to folks on foot. Need a lift?" Trust had become a foreign language lately, thinned out by my daughter's practiced cruelties. Necessity won. "I'd be grateful," I said, hauling the suitcase up to the door. "Where to?" he asked as I climbed onto the cracked bench seat. "Albuquerque," I replied, surprising myself. I had kin there, my late sister's girl, Marisol, who still sent Christmas photos and had sounded genuinely heartsore when she called after the funeral. Name's Virgil, he said, merging back into the stream. Virgil Ortega. You look like you've had a week of it. I studied his profile. Creases carved by sun and time, eyes with a tired gentleness, hands easy on the wheel. Nadine, I said. Nadine Porter. I paused. And yes, a week and then some. Virgil nodded, not nosy. We rode in quiet for miles, sagebrush flats unfurled, punctuated by pump jacks and distant mesas. The landscape felt like me, scoured, still standing. My daughter dropped me back there, I heard myself say, both of us startled by the confession. She believes she's inherited my life now that my husband is gone. Virgil's jaw worked. Kids nowadays, he muttered. Some of 'em got more entitlement than gratitude. He flicked his eyes my way. But you don't read like a woman who stays pushed. Something in his tone made me look closer. You speak from experience? He huffed out a laugh with no humor in it. My boy and his wife been pushing hard to park me in a memory care community. Telling folks I'm getting confused. Truth is, they want to liquidate my spread and fund their plans. He rolled his shoulders, and a flash of something fierce lit his gaze. I beat him to it. Sold the ranch last month to my neighbor's daughter, girl who grew up riding my fence line. She'll honor the land. I tucked the proceeds into a foundation trust. Goes to scholarships when I go. My boy's still none the wiser. How did it feel? I asked, and I didn't try to hide the hunger in my voice. Like the scales coming even, he said, like naming something true. We drove in a clean, understanding silence after that. Two people who discovered the bonds they'd watered for decades had calcified into chains someone else meant to yank. As the Sandias came into view and the desert gave way to stucco subdivisions, Virgil cleared his throat. You got a plan, Miss Porter? I saw Marisol's number on my phone, her steady voice. If you ever need to land somewhere, Tia, say the word. I pictured Kendra, right about now, bumping against the first polite, impenetrable wall of the trust. I thought of the little casita I'd leased downtown 2 months earlier under a quiet checking account Kendra never knew existed. I'm going to rebuild, I said. The sentence felt like a vow. On my terms. Good, Virgil said. Sometimes family ain't blood. Sometimes it's whoever actually cares whether you wake up tomorrow. He let me out near a battered diner off Central, a neon roadrunner blinking in the window, then tipped his cap and rolled away. Inside, the place smelled like bacon fat and burned coffee, the booths patched with duct tape, the air tender with night shift weariness. I slid into the corner. A lone widow in black probably looked like a public service announcement about abandonment, if they only knew. A waitress in her 40s with Kool-Aid blonde hair and kind eyes came by with the pot. Rough morning, sweetheart? Rough week, I said, curling my hands around the heat, but getting better by the minute. Food helps. Having a plan helps more, she said, topping me off. I've got both. I smiled before she moved on. I scrolled to Marisol's contact. She'd been Harold's favorite, nurse practitioner's brain, her mother's gentleness, her father's steel. After my sister passed 5 years back, Marisol kept us in the loop, mailed the twins' school photos, never once hinted at need. She picked up on the third ring. Tia Nadine, how are you holding up? Better than expected, I said, and meant it. I'm in Albuquerque, at Roadrunner Diner on Central. Any chance? I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said without hesitation. Order the green chili pie. Trust me. When the line clicked off, warmth bloomed in my chest. That's what family ought to feel like. No calculations, just showing up. My phone buzzed again. Kendra. Mom, there's some paperwork glitch with the house. Call me. I read it twice, then deleted it. Yesterday she commanded me to find my own way. Today she needed my signature. The ground was already tilting and she could feel it. Marisol blew through the door 22 minutes later, dark hair escaping a ponytail, scrubs flecked with coffee. She spotted me fast and slid into the booth, her brown eyes, my sister's, full of concern. "What happened? Kendra said you were settled." I searched her face for that click of self-interest I'd learned to read in Kendra. Found none. "She dropped me on the shoulder of 550 this morning," I said matter-of-factly. "Announced they were keeping everything and I should figure myself out." Marisol's mouth fell open. Her voice went hot, then careful. "A week after Harold's funeral?" "She believes she inherited a ready-made life," I said, taking a grateful sip. "House, savings, the lot." "But Harold, there had to be provisions," she said, then paused as she registered the calm in my voice. "You don't look wrecked." "I'm not wrecked," I said. "I'm unshackled." The waitress dropped 2 slices of green chili apple pie. We let them steam while Marisol leaned in. "Tell me everything." So I did. I walked her through the soft erosion of respect, the overheard renovation plans, the call to Gabriel, the trusts, the transfers, the life insurance redirected to the children's hospital. Harold's wish kept private on purpose. She listened without interrupting, her expression moving from shock to comprehension to something bright, approval. "So when she tries to claim the house," Marisol said slowly, "she'll meet a wall with my name on the buzzer," I finished. "Same with the accounts and the policy, done and donated." Marisol sat back, studying me like a new patient who'd just given a precise history. "How long?" 2 years, since the day we recognized what Kendra and Travis were really after. We finally forked into the pie, tart and sweet with a kick that made my eyes water. Marisol set down her fork, jaw tight. "Kendra called me yesterday," she said. "Asked if I'd help talk sense into you if you made things difficult. Wanted to know whether you'd accept your new reality." It hit like a body blow, then glanced off. No target left to bruise. "What did you tell her?" "That, after 42 years of marriage and a lifetime raising her ungrateful behind, you earned peace on your own terms." Marisol's language surprised a laugh out of me. "She won't have liked that." "She didn't." Marisol's mouth quirked. "Not even a little." My phone vibrated a 3rd time. "Mom, this is serious. The lawyer says everything is in a trust, and I can't get access without you. Call me now." I held it where Marisol could read. She blew out a breath. She's panicked, as she should be. I took another bite, let the spice burn clean. She mistook unconditional love for unconditional tolerance. "What now?" Marisol asked. "Now I rebuild. The trust throws off more than enough. I've got a casita downtown, signed the lease 2 months ago. Maybe I travel. Maybe I volunteer. Maybe I teach a night class again. As for Kendra, she can learn how it feels to have certainty vanish without warning." "She'll test the fences," Marisol warned. "Tears, apologies, grief, excuses." "I know." I powered the phone fully off and slid it into my purse. I'm no longer on her schedule. We ate the last of the pie in companionable quiet. When the plates were crumbs, Marisol touched my hand. "Spare room's open if you need it. The twins have been dying to meet their great-aunt properly." "That's kind. I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be a burden. You'll be family," she said, steady as a diagnosis. "The kind that shows up, not the kind that drops people on highways." I squeezed her fingers. "I'd like that." The bell over the door jingled, and in walked her twins, 11, mirror images except for expression. One openly skeptical, one cautiously hopeful. They'd ridden in with their uncle and sprinted ahead. "Mom said our great-aunt Nadine is staying. the skeptical one announced. Is it true your daughter posted mean stuff about you? Isela, Marisol murmured. We use our inside voice. I crouched to their eye level. She did. What do you think about that? They exchanged the kind of look that passes whole conversations between siblings. We think she wants people to feel sorry for her, Isela said. So they won't ask hard questions, her sister Anna added. Both correct, I said, as if grading a short answer. Their faces lit. Something in my chest loosened. Someone was listening to me as if my words mattered. We left the diner together, the twins chattering about soccer practice and science fair, and whether green chili counts as a vegetable. It does, according to Isela's teacher. In Marisol's compact SUV, the ordinary hum of their lives, snacks rustling, seatbelts clicking, questions pinging, felt like a lullaby. At her house off Carlisle, mature cottonwoods made lace on the sidewalks, two curious faces pressed against the living room window. Inside, the air smelled like tomatoes and oregano. Lasagna night, Marisol said. Coincidence or fate? Both, I said, suddenly and ravenously hungry. Over dinner, the girls interrogated me with the sincere intensity of kids who've been taught to think. Did you really start teaching when you were 45? Anna asked. I did. First day in a room of teenagers at 45 felt like stepping in front of a stampede. I learned to whistle loud. That's brave, Isela said. Grown-ups think they're too old to start. The comment went straight to the hollow place Kendra had tried to make. Turns out too late is a story other people tell about you. After dishes, Marisol poured us each a small glass of red wine and nodded toward the sofa. We should talk next steps. She opened a laptop. I screen captured all of Kendra's posts before she thinks to clean them up. She's not just embarrassing you, she's crafting incompetence. She's savvier than I gave her credit for, I said, or more desperate. My phone, on again so I could text Gabriel, lit with Kendra's name. I let it buzz 3 times, then 4. When it started again immediately, I thumbed answer and toggled to speaker. Mom, Kendra said, voice pitched to the exact note of tender concern. Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm safe, I said. Safer than this morning. About earlier, I was harsh. I'm grieving. I said things I didn't mean. Please come home so we can talk. Home? I said mildly. It's your home, too. We're family, she said, laying the word down like a trap. This morning you told me you were keeping everything and I should figure myself out, I replied. Now it's our home? Silence crackled. I talked to Travis, she said, crisp again. We want to work out living arrangements. In the house you believe you inherited. There's confusion, she snapped. Dad changed documents without telling us. The lawyer says there's some trust. We need your signature. And there it was, the reason for the emergency kindness. Your father and I expressed our wishes in writing, I said. You might try reading them. I can't read them. They're locked up in a trust and you're being difficult. The word hung in the room, ugly and familiar. I'm not being difficult, I said. I'm simply not making it easy to take what isn't yours. Mom, are you feeling okay? She asked, coating the words with performative concern. You're not making sense. I'm clearer than I've been in years, I said, clear enough to remember you leaving me on the side of US 5x50 this morning. I didn't leave you, she protested. Look, can we please meet at the house? The house held by the trust you can't access, I said, and the quiet on the line lengthened. Her tone shifted. Less velvet, more wire. Fine. Say you overheard something you misunderstood. We were being adults, planning ahead, hiding assets, playing paper games. That's cruel. I laughed softly. Cruel as a highway shoulder in July. "You're trying to hurt your own family," she said, dropping the mask entirely. "No, I'm protecting myself from people who treat me like an obstacle to their ambitions." Another silence, long enough that I pictured her calculating angles. When she spoke again, the blade was bared. "I think you need help, professional help. We should talk about an evaluation." I ended the call. Marisol stared at the phone, then at me. She went straight to competency. "She did," I said, oddly calm. "Phase 2. When the script stops working, change the scene." "Can she make that stick?" Marisol asked. "Not unless the laws of evidence changed overnight." I managed a small smile. "Gabriel has 15 years of records on me. We filmed statements with Harold last spring. I saw Dr. Lynn for a cognitive workup last month, and she wrote me up like a crossword champion." Marisol's shoulders dropped. "Then we'll be fine. But she won't stop. She'll escalate." Upstairs, the twins argued about whose turn it was to feed the cat. The sound felt like real life, uncomplicated, unweaponized. I let it soak in. Kendra had misjudged me for a long time. I wasn't the dazed, malleable widow she'd scripted. I was a teacher who'd outstared 100 manipulative teenagers, a woman who'd been preparing for this exact test for 2 years, and I was finally, firmly done playing defense. I woke before the sun in Marisol's guest room, the silhouette of cottonwoods cutting lace across the blinds. The city was still and blue. I dressed in the navy sheath Harold always said made me look like a principal on picture day, clipped back my hair, and stared in the mirror until the woman looking back at me steadied her own gaze. At 7:00 a.m. on the dot, I stepped into the elevator of a sandstone building on Lomas, where Ortiz and Rivas kept a floor that smelled like paper and peppermint oil. Gabriel met me in the reception area with a mug of coffee. His assistant insisted I try. Cinnamon and piloncillo, house specialty. He was lean, silver at the temples, eyes that belonged to someone who had made a lifetime of reading both statutes and people. "We've got this," he said, not as comfort but as assessment. "Walk me through the last 48 hours using your notes. We'll staple new pages onto the timeline." I slid a folder across his desk, handwritten dates, screenshots Marisol had captured, Kendra's text messages, my summary of the phone call she tried to steer toward evaluation. He read as if he were back in moot court, annotating margins with a fountain pen, asking precise questions that slotted each incident into a legal cubby. "She's laying foundation for a capacity challenge," he concluded, tapping the stack. "Public narrative of mom is slipping, paired with abandonment to generate crisis, followed by we're concerned, and a push toward assessment. Classic. Soften the audience, then apply leverage. Can she make it stick?" I asked. He smiled a fox's smile. "Not with your file. We aren't just prepared, we're over-prepared. Dr. Lynn's cognitive report from last month rates you top decile for your cohort. The video affidavits you and Harold recorded last spring, clean, deliberate, time-stamped, speak directly to intent. Your financial logs show years of consistent management. The trust instruments themselves, bulletproof, irrevocable, properly funded, no whiff of undue influence, no last-minute changes under duress." He slid another envelope toward me, larger, thicker, and Harold insisted on one more safeguard. Inside, a deed, clean and simple. 9114 Candleflower Court. Fee simple title vested in the Juniper Trust. Lifetime occupancy reserved to me, with right of substitution should I wish to trade it for an equivalent property. Recorded 6 months before Harold's heart betrayed him. "He wanted you to have a place that wasn't freighted with history," Gabriel said softly. "Something that is yours without anyone else's claim, legal or emotional. New locks, new start, Keys are in the folder. For the first time since the funeral, grief reached me without teeth. I let it. It came not like a wave, but like warm rain on parched ground. And I sat in Gabriel's office, letting my husband's foresight wash away the last film of guilt Kendra had tried to paint over my vision. "What about the insurance?" I asked when I trusted my voice again. "Already endowed to Sunrise Children's," he said. "Payout acknowledged. Naming gift letter drafted. We can schedule the plaque later if you want." "Harold would like the quiet version," I said. "No gala." "A check that does work and doesn't pose for photos," Gabriel agreed. "Very Harold." We spent the next hour building a neat little fortress, a cease and desist letter drafted and waiting, language for a harassment complaint templated, instructions for what to do if Kendra escalated to wellness checks or guardianship petitions, a list of numbers to call and numbers to block. He printed a clean timeline for me to tuck in my bag, a trail of breadcrumbs for future courts, if future courts became unavoidable. By late morning, I was standing under a high blue sky on Candleflower Court, keys biting into my palm. The house was a craftsman dream, small enough to be honest and large enough to breathe. Deep front porch, sage green trim, flowers I didn't yet know climbing a trellis. The lock turned as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, light poured like water. Hardwood floors, built-in shelving that would love my books, a kitchen tiled the color of robin's eggs. On the butcher block, a folded note in Harold's slanted print. Nadine. If you're reading this, our contingency is live. This place has no arguments soaked into its walls, no opinions but yours. Grow what you like. Bring in what feeds you. Lock what hurts you out. Love you. H. I sat on the cool tile and cried in a way that didn't empty me, only cleared a path. Then I stood up, rolled my shoulders, and started moving. Utility calls first. Electric, water, internet, all stepping neatly into my name. Changing addresses, canceling services Kendra assumed were hers to commandeer. Each completed transfer clicked in my brain like a bolt sliding home. Marisol arrived in a rattle of laughter and shopping bags. The twins stormed through the front door like a search party, armed with paper towels, a lemon-scented spray, and opinions. "We brought lunch and 1,000 helpful ideas," Marisol announced. "Try to act grateful." "I am already grateful," I said, and meant it. Anna and Isola divided the house by committee. "We'll start with the bookshelves," Anna decreed. "A person's shelves say who they are." Isola opened windows and declared, "Out with stale air, in with our air." Marisol unfurled fresh curtains and pinned them up with clothespins. Heights adjusted, angles debated. It was domestic triage in the best sense. Attentive, intentional, cheerful. By mid-afternoon, the place felt not finished but claimed. We ate deli sandwiches at the kitchen island. Turkey, green chili, provolone, the Albuquerque Trinity, and plotted paint swatches. We were arguing about whether the guest room should go adobe peach or linen white when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "It's Kendra. I'm driving to Albuquerque. We need to talk." I turned the screen so Marisol could read. She pursed her lips. "She's moving from digital to physical." "Let her," I said, surprised at the calm blooming in my sternum. "I prefer real terrain." 15 minutes later, a call with her actual name. "I know you're in Albuquerque," she said by way of hello. "Tell me where. I'll pick you up and we'll fix this." "What precisely needs fixing?" I asked, keeping my voice even, like taking attendance. "You're confused. You left while we were grieving and now the bank's being weird and the lawyer is withholding documents. We need to coordinate so things can be released." "There's no release to coordinate," I said. There's a structure with a gate you can't open. Not because I'm being unkind, but because you are not the gatekeeper." "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "This is still our home. We can work out terms." "I have a home," I said, and on a wicked little impulse added, "If you're desperate to see where I live, you're welcome to come see it." I gave her the address and hung up before she could spin meanings out of it. "Are you sure?" Marisol asked. "I'm tired of letting her pick the stage," I said. "Let her stand on mine." They came 20 minutes later, tires crunching on the gravel, in a rented sedan that tried to look expensive. Through the living room window, I watched them pause in the driveway, faces shifting from certainty to confusion when the house did not map to anything in Kendra's mental inventory. She wore what I recognized immediately as her reasonable daughter uniform: mustard sheath, tasteful earrings, hair ironed into obedience. Travis had put on his funeral suit without ironing it. Both of them looked like they were about to sell me a timeshare. Kendra's knock was brisk. I let it echo, then opened the door. "Whose place is this?" she demanded, pushing past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. Travis followed, his eyes doing the quick geometry of square footage and comps. "Mine," I said. "And before you ask how, the answer is, because your father loved me enough to plan." Her head snapped around. "He didn't tell me." "Most of our marriage did not require your permission," I said pleasantly, and took my seat in a wingback that had come ahead in a moving pod and knew exactly where it belonged. Kendra perched on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped in performative patience. "All right, let's talk like adults. There's obviously been a misunderstanding with the bank and the attorney. They're saying there are trusts, plural, that I can't access without your cooperation." "Correct," I said. "Why?" Travis cut in. "Why would you hide assets from your family?" "Because my family left me on the shoulder of a highway in July," I said. "Because my family reduced my life to resale value. Because my family introduced a valuation the minute manipulation failed." "That's not fair," Kendra said. "We were—" She stopped herself, nostrils flaring. "Grief makes people say things. Grief reveals things," I corrected. Travis leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice dropping into the cadence he used when he thought he was the smartest man in the room. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign documents authorizing us to manage the estate so bills can be paid and assets maintained. This is not about taking from you. It's about stewardship." "Stewardship," I repeated, rolling the word as if tasting a wine and discovering it had turned to vinegar. "No." He blinked. "Excuse me." "No," I said again, setting my teacup in its saucer so the porcelain made a tiny, satisfying click. "I am not transferring authority. I am not granting you powers. I am not returning to Juniper Lane. We are not negotiating my security." Kendra's mask cracked. "You're punishing me. You want to watch me suffer." "I want you to learn consequences," I said, letting myself feel the steel I'd been forging for months. "That is different from wanting suffering." She stood abruptly. "Do you hear yourself? This vindictive streak isn't you. People will think you're unwell." "People already read your posts," I said. "They'll have context." Color climbed into her cheeks. "I never named you." "You didn't need to," I said. "You posted from my porch." Travis stood now too, failing to loom. "We can make this very difficult," he said, voice low. "Lawyers, court orders, adult protective services." "By all means," I said. "Call everyone. I've already set coffee aside for them." They looked at each other then, a little spooked by my lack of flinch. Kendra tried one last key she thought might still work. She softened her mouth, dropped her voice half an octave. "Mom, please, I'm your daughter." "I know," I said quietly. That used to mean something different. Silence lengthened. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and settled. Sun through the west windows turned dust motes into glitter. "This conversation is over," I said, standing. "You're leaving now." "You can't throw us out," Travis scoffed. I opened the front door and stepped aside. "Watch me." There's a tone teachers learn, a frequency that announces the end of negotiating. It came back to me easily. They heard it. Kendra's mouth flattened. Travis muttered about judges and rights. They went. I shut the door behind them and turned the deadbolt. The house changed temperature, like a body relaxing after a fever breaks. Marisol emerged from the hallway, where she and the twins had politely vanished when the doorbell rang. She looked at me the way nurses look at patients after a hard procedure. Scanning, measuring, ready to catch. "You're steady," she said finally. "I'm steady," I agreed, surprised and not surprised. Anna and Isela rushed in with reports. We didn't hear what they said, but we saw his face in the window and he looked like a mean PE teacher. She kept touching things like she already owned them. "We made a sign for your office. Want to see?" The sign was block letters on poster board. "Porter Study. Strong ideas only." "Perfect," I said, and pinned it to the wall with blue painter's tape. That night, after the twins had paraded around in my reading glasses, and we'd christened the living room with a first chapter of a paperback about women hiking alone on purpose, I lay in my new bed, in my new house, and listened to a new kind of quiet. Not the quiet of being ignored in your own space, but the quiet of absence you choose. In the morning, I made coffee and watered the ferns someone had kindly kept alive. I sat at the table with Gabriel's timeline and a pen and added yesterday's chapter. Home confrontation. Offered no access. Established boundary. No loss of temper. Witnesses present. I wrote it like a teacher drafting lesson notes. Clear objectives, clean outcomes. By noon, the next movement arrived right on cue. A notification blinked onto my phone from an account with more followers than Kendra deserved. A photo of her, somber face tilted just so, standing in front of the Juniper Lane porch. Caption: "Grief is heavy. So is watching a parent spiral. Doing my best to honor Dad while dealing with Mom's erratic behavior. Please be kind." The comments were sympathy soup. Little praying hands. People who had never met me diagnosing me in emojis. I didn't shake. I didn't even sigh. I took screenshots at every scroll, noting the timestamp. Then I texted Gabriel, Stage 3, public spiral narrative. Receipts attached. His reply arrived in under a minute. C&D ready. Also, expect a wellness check. Put on coffee. Smile. Don't explain. Demonstrate. He wasn't wrong. At 4:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and county badge clipped to her cardigan. I opened the door and stood back, already halfway to the kitchen. "Ms. Porter, I'm Frances Chavez with Adult Protective Services. Your daughter expressed some concerns. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course," I said. "Coffee? Cookies? Book club left too many." Frances took in the room like a nurse reads a chart. Floors clean, fresh flowers not drooping, mail stacked in tidy piles, a calendar on the wall with actual commitments written in actual ink. She didn't sit until I did. "Tell me about your week," she said, and it wasn't a trap. It was an open door. I told her, not with bitterness, just with facts. Highway shoulder, texts, call, the plan Harold and I made while we were still good at making plans. I showed her my volunteer schedule for the Community Literacy Center, my syllabus for an adult ed composition course the dean had begged me to take on, my receipts for utilities, my grocery list. I did not wave my competency like a flag. I simply lived it in front of her. She asked careful questions about pressure, about coercion, about who had keys to my home. She read the cease and desist Gabriel had drafted and nodded, approving the tone. She studied the screenshots of Kendra's posts and the transcript Marisol had made of the evaluation call, and her mouth tightened in a way I recognized. A professional bone-deep anger saved for people who use systems meant for protection as weapons. "Ms. Porter," she said finally, closing her notebook, "what you're describing has a name: financial exploitation, emotional manipulation. It falls under our umbrella as elder abuse, even if saying those words feels strange in your mouth." "They do feel strange," I admitted, "but I'd rather hold the right words than the wrong ones forever." "I can file my report today," she said. "You can also petition for a protective order to keep your daughter from contacting you directly. It's a strong step, and it works both legally and psychologically." "The psychological part is the point," I said. "I'd like the quiet more than the court victory." She smiled. "They often arrive in the same envelope." We signed what needed signing. I texted Gabriel. Within an hour, we were at my kitchen table while he slid the protective order petition across the wood. I signed in blue ink, the loops of my name confident where they needed to be. That evening, Marisol and the twins brought over tacos and a bouquet the girls had arranged themselves. We ate on the porch while the sky did its nightly miracle over the sandias, pink bruising to coral, then gold evaporating into violet. "Would you be happier with a cat?" Isela asked solemnly. "Studies say pets improve moods." "Studies," Anna echoed, "and also our house is full of kittens." "Let me try being a person with plants first," I said. "If I pass that class, I'll enroll in Cat 101. They accepted my syllabus. After they left, after the dishes were done and the lock was turned and the sprinklers clicked once in the dark, I sat at the desk under my new office sign and wrote 3 sentences on an index card. I propped it beside the lamp where I'd see it at dawn. "I am not a problem to be managed. I am the adult in the room. I own the gate and the key." The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. 2 weeks later, a certified envelope arrived with my name spelled correctly for once. The return address. A law office I didn't recognize. Inside, a tidy summons. Kendra, through counsel, was petitioning the probate court to challenge the trusts and request a competency evaluation of her mother. I read it twice, 3 times, then laid it on the counter and poured myself tea. The panic I expected never arrived. It was almost anticlimactic, like watching a script play out after you've already memorized the ending. Gabriel met me at a bistro on Central, already armed with a leather briefcase fat with documents. He ordered enchiladas for both of us without asking, as if food were fuel for strategy. "She's walking straight into the trap she built," he said, flipping open the file. "Explain," I prompted, sipping my tea. "By asking the court to review your capacity, she's forcing the system to weigh evidence. And what do we have? Cognitive assessments, deposition videos, a trail of consistent financial behavior, corroborating witnesses. What does she have? A handful of social media posts and a reputation for melodrama." He smiled thinly. "If she insists on a fight, the record will reflect her malice more clearly than her claim. And the trusts? Untouchable. Established years before Harold's death, under documented capacity. Any lawyer worth their license could tell her she's burning retainer hours for nothing. But perhaps her lawyer enjoys billable hours." I leaned back, strangely at peace. "So we let her walk into court?" "Exactly," Gabriel said. "And we'll walk out with sanctions in our pocket." The hearing came on an October morning, sharp with blue sky and chili roasting in roadside drums. I dressed in my navy suit again, hair pinned in a style that whispered competence, not grief. Marisol drove me downtown, the twins waving signs they'd scrawled in markers. Go, Aunt Nadine. Win with words. I laughed all the way to the courthouse. Inside, the room smelled faintly of varnish and nerves. Kendra sat at the petitioner's table in a blouse that wanted to be respectable, eyes rimmed in carefully painted sorrow. No Travis beside her. Word was he'd already peeled away under the weight of their foreclosure notice. Her attorney looked resigned, shuffling thin papers that wouldn't stand up in a breeze. Judge Ramirez presided with the calm of someone who'd seen every family play this theater. Let's proceed, she said. Kendra's lawyer mumbled about confusion, isolation, erratic behavior. Then he produced Kendra's phone, scrolling through her posts as if emojis were evidence. When it was our turn, Gabriel stood with the kind of presence that makes juries lean in. He produced Dr. Lynn's evaluation. Superior cognitive functioning. He played the video Harold and I recorded 18 months ago. Our voices clear as glass. We are of sound mind. We make these transfers intentionally, for our protection, and to prevent exploitation. He filed letters from my teaching colleagues, each testifying to my clarity, my wit, my daily management of classes. He handed over utility bills, volunteer schedules, syllabi, even my grocery receipts, evidence of a life lived with structure, not collapse. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I told the judge plainly what had happened, the highway, the posts, the phone calls that dangled love as bait for signatures. I spoke like a teacher explaining cause and effect, clear sentences, no embellishment. Judge Ramirez listened, hands folded, gaze steady. Then she turned to Kendra's table. Counselor, your client has provided no substantive evidence of incapacity. What she has provided is a pattern of projection and public defamation. The trusts are sound, established with foresight. Petition denied. Costs awarded to respondent. The gavel's knock felt like a door slamming shut. Kendra's face crumpled, not into tears, but into something raw. A child told no for the first time in her adult life. Outside, she intercepted me by the courthouse steps. Her voice cracked. Mom, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still your daughter. Don't you love me anymore? I looked at her, the woman I had carried inside me, fed, taught, forgiven. The woman who had seen me not as a mother, but as a bank. I loved my daughter, I said softly. But she died on Highway 550 the morning she left me there. And I walked away without looking back. That evening I sat on my candle-flower porch with a glass of wine. The garden Harold had chosen glowing gold in the last light. Marisol's twins were building a fort out back, shrieking with laughter, alive in a way that felt like oxygen. My phone was silent, shielded by the protective order and Gabriel's watchful hand. No more begging calls, no more threats, just quiet. I thought of Harold, of the life we'd stitched together and the foresight he'd left me like a final gift. I thought of my students, eager to write themselves into futures they believed possible. I thought of roses blooming without poison in their soil. Consequences had arrived, as they always do. Kendra would learn to live inside them. I had already learned to live inside mine, and mine felt like freedom. 3 months after the court hearing, life had taken on a rhythm that no longer felt like survival, but like choosing. Mornings began in my new kitchen with the kettle hissing and sunlight streaming across the robin's egg tile Harold had insisted on. I taught 2 nights a week at the community college, adult students who thanked me for homework instead of whining about it. Wednesdays I spent at the literacy center, reading with adults who'd never been told they were capable. Thursdays were for the book club. Wine, arguments, laughter in my living room until midnight. The silence from Kendra was not absolute. There were ripples, of course, anonymous comments on social media that mirrored her phrasing a little too closely. A cousin in Arizona forwarding a message about how I was struggling, a Christmas card that never came. But legally, practically, and emotionally, she no longer touched my daily air. The protective order worked like a moat. She could glare across, but she couldn't step over. One frosty morning, Marisol pulled into my driveway with bagels and the local paper. She laid it on the table with the kind of grim satisfaction nurses reserve for delivering a diagnosis no one wanted but everyone expected. There it was, in the business notices. Foreclosure auction scheduled for 822 Palo Verde, property of Travis and Kendra Lewis, due to default on mortgage obligations. I read it without a tremor. So the castle fell, I murmured. Without even a siege, Marisol replied, buttering her bagel. The twins, eavesdropping as always, crowed in unison. Karma! They'd learned the word at school and delighted in using it at every opportunity. I raised my coffee mug. To consequences, I said, and we clinked. The garden Harold had planted bloomed in riot that spring. Roses, wild and defiant, as though they too were grateful for the absence of poison. I found myself kneeling in the dirt, pruning shears in hand, humming without realizing it. For the first time in years, my shoulders carried no invisible weight. It was in that moment that the county social worker, Frances, stopped by for a follow-up visit. She found me dirt-stained and happy, hair coming loose, kneeling among rose canes. You look well, she said, with a smile that was more observation than compliment. I am, I answered simply. We sat on the porch with lemonade while I updated her. She listened, took her notes, then leaned forward. You know, Nadine, a lot of women in your situation don't come out stronger. They get dragged under. But you built a ladder years ago and climbed it when you needed it. That's rare. I was a teacher, I said. I always told my students, preparation is half of passing the test. She laughed. Looks like you aced it. The final loose thread came one evening in May. I was grading essays when the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw her, Kendra, thinner, clothes too sharp for her frame, eyes ringed with something that wasn't just sleeplessness. Against the protective order, standing on my porch. I opened the door just far enough to be heard. You shouldn't be here, I said. Mom, please, she whispered. I lost everything. Travis left. The house is gone. I have nothing. You're all I have left. Her voice cracked, practiced or not. I couldn't tell any more. For a sliver of a second, I saw the little girl she once was, sticky with popsicle juice, clutching my hand at the county fair. My heart thudded once, then steadied. I told you once, I said quietly, that my daughter died on a highway in July. I mourned her. I buried her in my heart. Whoever you are now, you are not invited in. Her lips parted, her eyes filled, but I closed the door before she could speak again. I turned the deadbolt and leaned against the solid wood. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't ache. I felt only relief. The next morning, Gabriel filed the violation with the court. Kendra would face the law now, not my heart. That summer, Candleflower Court filled with laughter and tomato vines. The twins biked in circles on the driveway, shouting triumph at no hands victories. Marisol brought over wine and stories from the hospital. My students handed me essays about starting over, about grit, about second chances. On the anniversary of Harold's passing, I sat on the porch with his note in my hand. Grow what you like. Lock what hurts you out. I looked around me, the roses, the laughter, the pages of essays, and knew I had done exactly that. Freedom had not come the way I imagined it. It had come disguised as betrayal, abandonment, courtroom battles, but in the end, it arrived all the same. And so I ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have signed away your future for a scrap of false affection? Or would you too have closed the door, planted your roses, and chosen peace? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, there's another story waiting for you on the screen right now, one that will surprise you.